swaps. Because a lot of what I do is more the traditional real estate, buying trophy assets, etc. And swaps are often an issue on these because the swaps are locked in, and to unlock the swap or break them is expensive when you look at the underlying assets. Is that still an issue, even when you're looking at the portfolios that you experts are handling?
My experience, I mean, virtually anything that RBS did had a swap in it. I mean, quite often swaps that went way beyond the term of the loan, inflation rate swaps, interest rate swaps. It was interesting when the Isabel portfolio was sold to Blackstone. I mean, the swaps remained with RBS. The loans went to Blackstone. That's caused a certain amount of tension, I think. There are a number of there's some open questions in relation to the IVRC lot. Not a lot of the swaps are burnt off on those, but there's still a number of swaps left on them, and they will have to be dealt with. And there'll be a question about whether the swap goes with the loan or not, whether it stays where it is. And you've also still got the overhang of mis-selling of swaps. There's a lot of cases where there's a question left over, and if you were buying a loan with a personal guarantee, it had a swap that had burnt off, but if there was a mis-selling claim, there's a possible set-off position on those things. So that creates some further uncertainty in terms of how those things will actually be dealt with. But I mean, as I say, RBS is probably the most active in that, and there's still I've virtually never come across a loan that hasn't got a swap on it.
If we can answer that from my perspective, it's a huge issue on all the UK assets we manage. It's an absolute non-issue on all the non-UK assets we manage. So there's a completely bipolar stand in terms of long-term, very negative swaps being in place on the UK loans. Identical loan in Germany or in Scandinavia would not have a swap.
No, we find it's still a big issue, and we find banks more inclined to obviously accept that it has to be a write-off for quite a lot of the swap, but then there's an issue between the swap counterparty and the lending bank, how that breaks down internally between them. It is. The other thing we find is on loan portfolio acquisitions, often there can sometimes be a putback right if it to the extent to which the swaps are going across, if the loan's tainted with any claim for mis-selling on the swap, sometimes the loans or the relevant loans can be put back to the bank. So it's not always a clear sale within the portfolio.
Yes, Rob.
DTZ just produced a research report on this, which has estimated that up to 10 billion of mis-sale claims could come through the UK, so it is a UK issue. And there's lots of anecdotal evidence of banks dealing with renewals, etc., where swaps go beyond the expiry date, or there's a claim that they were mis-sold in the first place. Difficult to understand when you're a professional real estate guy how you're going to claim negligence on a mis-sale. You didn't know that the swap was beyond the, etc. It's going to be interesting, but this is an area which is currently, well, till recently, under the radar screen, in that some banks are now having soft renegotiations in order to write off the risk and as a closer against the risk of illegal action in relation to mis-selling. It is a potentially a big area for UK banks still to make provision. So, yeah, it is.
You can ask, I mean, how is the legal system going to deal with this? What I understand is a 6-year barring period where you can't make claims on swaps issued sort of before the 6-year period.
Well,
most of this is issued in 2004, 5, 6, 7.
David will probably give the answer to that. But my understanding on statute of limitations is it's 6 years from the date in which the problem became obvious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not when the deal was actually struck.
Yeah, I see.
So, but that's still plenty of a grey area.
Yeah.
So it's just hitting the public arena.